I was trying to find model United Nations memes, and I googled MUN starter pack. Don't ask me why I was googling memes. And I saw these miniatures come up, and I was like, wait, those are really, really pretty. And so I looked into the game a little bit. I clicked on the link, figured out what it was, and decided a couple months later to buy myself the one of the starter packs for the game that came with probably almost 20 miniatures, and so I've been painting those pretty much ever since. It's taken me a really long time. My name is Adam Billen. I've been painting miniatures for almost a year and a half at this point, and I got into it with this game Infinity, which is what I'm painting right now. It is from a Spanish company. I'm a junior in high school. I'm 17. So miniature painting is a hobby where people take these bits of plastic or metal and they put them together and they paint them and they play tabletop war games. And tabletop war games are essentially games, they're similar to other board games, but they use those miniatures that are painted as the pieces for the game. So something like Warhammer 40,000, which is a very popular war game, you know, it's set 40,000 years in the future. There's a whole universe associated with it. So people take their plastic, they put it together, they paint it, and they play this tabletop game with it. And so miniature painting involves, first of all, getting the bits of your miniatures. So typically they're on a plastic sprue or they're just in little metal bits and bags. And then you take those and you do some prep work with them. You scrape off mold lines and you maybe wash off some of the weird like residue from the casting process. And then you glue them together with super glue, and then you prime them with what is essentially spray paint, and then you paint them with tiny little detail brushes, or maybe slightly bigger ones, but they're small brushes as compared to other sort of like something like oil painting or watercolor brushes. They're very, very small, and they use acrylic paints, and so you paint them, and then you take them out to the tabletop and you play whatever the game you want to play with them is. Some people paint competitively or for competition. Some people do commission work where people pay them to paint their miniatures. But the majority of the people that are doing it are generally just doing it to get their miniatures painted so that they're ready to play these tabletop war games. Personally, I'm mostly painting just because I enjoy the process of putting them together and painting them. And there are certainly a lot of other people like that, but generally people are doing it so that they can play those tabletop war games. So the first mini I ever painted was pretty classic. It was this skeleton from the Reaper set, the Reaper kit, and it's basically just this dude. You've got the color of his bone, got the color of his bow, you got the metal tip of his bow, and you got the tips of his arrows, and those are the only colors, and then the green of the grass. So super simple, and then you just slap a wash on there to like darken the recesses. A wash is just a really watered down paint, and what it does is it pools into like the crevices to make the shadows look realistic. So this is the first guy I painted. Honestly, I don't think he's that bad. Like, for what it is, I feel pretty good about it. Yeah, I would say that painting minis is an important part of my life. It definitely does give me a very different, a chance to exert a very different level of energy than I have to for other things. I tend to move quite quickly through other parts of my life, running from thing to thing, going from school to meetings to hanging out with people to, doing whatever, just sort of moving really quickly and not really slowing down, to just be slow and quiet and methodical about anything. And it's so individual when you're painting, it's just you and your brushes and your paint and nobody else. And I think that it's important to have spaces like that where it's just you and you can just focus on one thing at a time. So painting is one of the few things where I get to just sort of sit and do something very, very slow and very, very detailed for a long time, and it brings me some sort of peace and calm in that greater crazy storm. Yeah, the best advice I've gotten is just to paint more. Like, that's really the only way to get better at the hobby, is to just paint, like, a lot. And, like, you're just naturally going to get better that way. You know, paint a lot. Don't start with too much. Like, don't buy a whole army to start to paint, because that's just really intimidating and it's going to take forever. So just start with like a skirmish game, or just 1 or 2 miniatures, or just like a simple like set of like line infantry, and then just spend a lot of time painting. Paint different miniatures, paint some really fast and paint some really slow, try new techniques, and just like have fun with the hobby.